If you were a host and you were sitting there naked and I had to pick you up and drag you down the stairs, I would definitely be wearing a hazmat suit.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld Edition, the unofficial companion piece for the hit HBO television series Westworld. My name is Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Gene Lyons.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And this is our third podcast episode of the week entitled The Westworld Telegraph. And this is where we take the top 20 emails that you, the fans, have sent in, and we read and respond to them in a little segment we call The Westworld Telegraph. Gentlemen, I can honestly say that I spent the last 4 days going through all of our emails and responding to them one by one. It's because like we need interns at this point.
It's gotten a little crazy. I got a half day today from work, as a lot of people did, and I was so excited. I was going to watch Arsenal soccer and go to the bar, hang out with the guys. Still not drinking, but just going to go hang out. And I started getting into the emails, and the sun went down, and I was still reading the emails. And that's after going through them all week too. The volume is just insane, people.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing. We don't want you to think that we're trying to discourage it. Even if we don't read it on the air, it still a lot of times will cause us to have conversations back and forth. So please don't take it as a bad thing. Keep writing in, because the stuff even we're putting online on the website and the Telegraph is getting tons of traction, and it's actually starting other people having thoughts, and they're kind of putting them together. So we appreciate it. Keep doing it. Drown us until we're forced to get a college intern.
Yeah, I was scared, and Big D and Gene will tell you this. I was afraid that when we switched formats, because when we initially started this, we were reading every single email. If you go back to episode 3, we read every single email that we received. Then the next week, we got more. And then it became, hey, why don't we do the top 20? We create a competition. I was scared that people would stop writing in. No. What it's done, guys, is people start writing in more and more because they want to get on. The quality, in addition to the quantity, has exponentially increased. So the top 20 that we're going to read today, they're the best of the best. They're the best of the bunch. And we all three have all voted on it. So it'll be a fun episode. We're glad that you found us. We're glad that you found us. For those of you who've never listened to the Westworld Telegraph or to Shat on TV, essentially we are the Westworld podcast that doesn't take itself too seriously, and we try to keep things at a reasonable level and have fun with the Westworld. Try that nice mixture, guys. I unfortunately Googled ourselves and read it, and surprisingly, we have a pretty decent reputation on Reddit, which I was not expecting.
I'm flattered.
All right. So with that being said, we've got some things upcoming. We'll save it to the end of this cast, but we have a big sale that's about to hit our website for Thanksgiving and Black Friday and Cyber Monday that we want everyone to be part of, but we'll save that to the end. Big D, let's turn on the Westworld Telegraph and hop in to the top 20 emails of the week. Before we do this, I did get an email from Andrew Taylor. Andrew Taylor sent in an email. Unfortunately, didn't crack the top 20. I let him know that, but he said he wanted a shout out on the podcast. So Andrew Taylor, this is us all giving you a shout out. The first email comes from Chris C. It's entitled, "What is a Crackpot Theory?" He goes on to write, "After the first episodes of Westworld, there are some unanswered questions." And he lists it out here. He says, why did Ford create the Wyatt story? Why are Wyatt's men immune to bullets? What did Arnold do? What is the maze? Why is Dolores retracing her steps? Why was the church in town buried? Why is Ford digging a canyon? Why is the William the Man in Black? And why is the Man in Black in a hurry? A crackpot theory is a partial theory, which only answers some of the questions. It's akin to shipping in fan fiction. It is incomplete, unbalanced, and distorted. It imposes a worldview on the story. It is more about the theorist than the world. A correct theory answers all the question, is complete, balanced, objective. It's free of a worldview. It has the ring of truth. In fiction, the writer's intention forms And Gene, you're going to have to pronounce this for me.
I believe it's a Menongian.
Menongian truth. If the writers are careful, it should be possible to discover it, and it will answer all of the above questions. So, Gene, you said this email was life. What did you mean by this?
Yeah, essentially, this is brilliant because what we're getting into, the danger, people become fans of the show, which is great, and people start to then think, this is how I would like the show to go, or this is what I see happening here. And they try to take every plot twist and turn and fact that they're given and weave a story that matches all of them. Hence the crackpot theories. The crackpot theories typically, if you look at any of a lot of the emails that we get, the person is answering a specific question, but failing to align that with all the other questions. And that's not how writers work. It's not like the writer sat down in a room and said, okay, we're going to have 30 different questions with 30 different answers that have nothing to do with one another. Rather, it's, kind of like you've rolled out, Roger, and how Dick has rolled out. There's got to be a theory that that answers all the major questions. Every major question that's been put out there by the show is put out there for a reason. It's part of the answer. So if you got to connect those dots, right? And a lot of people have done a lot of really great work, whether it's saying that this is all a creation myth, or whether they're saying that this is all even the people who say it's VR, although I disagree, it's like it would answer how all these things can be. And in that idea of the Menongian truth, it's basically, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, it's basically this idea that, hang with me here, an object can be true in a world that is not true, in the sense that it's got to make sense within the parameters of that world. And also that an example of this is if I say, hey, the golden mountain, okay, so now you think of a golden mountain, it's a mountain and it is golden. Or if I say the round square, well, that's a weird one, but you can think of it in your head. That can exist, a round square, but it's impossible, but it's possible because you just thought of it, right? If you apply that to Westworld, that should guide your logic. It's a really heavy thought, but it's something to just bear in mind when you're coming up with your responses. Let's not write fan fiction. Let's not say, like people do with Star Wars and Star Trek and all this other stuff. But let's try to stick to making something make sense.
Well, I think we're in a difficult situation. On most stories, we have some kind of ground, some bedrock that we know, some facts that we can base everything else that we see upon it. Here, it's complete quicksand. We don't know a time. We don't know a true location. We don't know whether what we're seeing is real. We have an unreliable narrator. So everything that we see comes into question. Whereas if it was a normal story that was told, say, in a period that we knew of in history, we can then apply basic rules of physics. We could know around that time what was going on in history. We knew historical references, points of reference. Here, there's nothing. There's nothing that grounds us, that lets us say, okay, we know this is this year and we know it's this location. Without that, everything else is just kind of floating out there. And there's no way for anybody to get a clear, coherent story until we have something that we know is based in fact. But I don't complain. I kind of like the adventure.
So is what Chris is trying to get across here, Gene and Big D, is he trying to say that when you're forming your theories, when you're forming your hypothesis and you're sending in your emails to shatontv.com, is it that you want to start with the basis of answering the questions that he lists here and then form a hypothesis around this? Is that the proper way to formulate a solid Menongian theory?
I think what Chris is saying is basically that don't treat these all as separate questions. It's, again, I think that you have to come up with the idea that a team of writers sat down and said, okay, what is the base truth? What is the core of all of this? And then make everything branch out from that. They didn't do it the other way around. They didn't say, hey, let's put 30 disparate pieces out there and then bring them together, which is what a lot of people are doing. And his whole point is that, we could keep calling things crackpot theories. And the reason why they are crackpot theories, and I'm not discouraging them by any way, they're fun, but it's just saying that you have to, if you really want to get down to the root of this, if you want to be the one who cracks this nut, you've got to do a couple things. You got to be balanced, you got to be complete, you got to not inject yourself into this, and you got to answer all these questions with a single answer that makes it all make sense. And until you can, tread carefully, or at least acknowledge, which I think most people do. We put like hashtag tinfoil right at the start of something, and that's carte blanche. You can do whatever you want after that.
Well, I'd read in an interview that Nolan said he's read some of the fan theories, and he said that some people are very close. So I would be surprised, and I think that would be a testament to someone who could come up with it and tie it all together. If you can put the pieces together without knowing the entire, you're essentially doing a puzzle without the box or the cover. That would be a hell of a job. And what makes it even more complicated is the story. There's no central character that we're following. Who is the main character of the show? When you have such a diverse cast and set of characters, I think they're fairly equal. You could name 3 or 4 people who are central characters. That makes it more difficult.
I think what's interesting about that, though, is that Roger's theory centers around Dolores. Your theory centers around Dr. Ford. I don't have one yet. So it's interesting, and I think both of them have a lot of credence, and both of them can actually coexist. So it's not that one or the other, like you're saying. But I do think that a lot of people have said, where does this show go from here? Is there room to move forward? Are they going to wrap it all up in 2 episodes? I don't think, and I don't know about you guys, I don't think there's any way this all gets wrapped up in 2 episodes. This is just the appetizer for the main course.
I agree. I think at the end of the season we'll have kind of our base level, and I think it builds on it from there. And I think of this is like a crime scene. You need a team of people to do it. You need somebody running DNA, somebody doing fingerprints. I think it's going to take all of us together to come up with it. And if one person can do it, God, kudos to you.
So let me ask you guys this. Are you going to be upset if some of these, if not all of these questions aren't answered? And if so, which question would you be most upset at if the writers of the show didn't answer it for us before the end of the season?
I think that the show is beautiful enough on its own for me to keep watching. I would rather have no answer than a rushed answer. And in fact, I just enjoy watching it. So it's, again, for me, we talk a lot about the theories because that's what the conversation is in the community. And, and that's fine. But for me, it's never really been about that. For me, it's about, how well the show is shot, the quality of the acting, the quality of the effects, the imagination that's thrown in there. And so for me, I'm fine with it. If there's a question that isn't answered that would bug me the most, was that the question?
Yeah, that's the question.
I think the question that would bother me the most is Ford a host or not? I'd really like to know.
And as far as I care, I would like answers to most of the things, but I don't care if they actually tie into the story. Because in real life, there are things that happen every day, which people would see as a clue. No, not everything is a clue. Some things just happen in life because, you got out of the house on time, you caught the green light, and you got into a car accident. So I would like them to tie up most of the loose ends, but I don't want them all to somehow be tied into a big story. Because some things just mean nothing. Some things mean exactly what they are.
Thanks, Chris, for writing in. And I forgot to point out, but as we do every episode, you can see all these emails, all our theories that were written in, regardless if we talk about them or not on the top 20 in the Telegraph. You can see all of them on our website. Just go to shatontv.com. You can post comments on theories that you like, theories that you don't like, or theories that make you smile. So that website again is shatontv.com. And go to the Westworld Telegraph. Now, it being Thanksgiving, we are going to give Big D a couple days off here. Big D, what is the time frame for getting these 100+ emails onto the website?
Yeah, and I was going to say that I try to get them done the next day, but it's time consuming, and I don't mind doing it, but I want to do it right, and I want to make sure that I'm not posting somebody's email address or somebody's last name. I want to be respectful. And I want to make sure that I'm actually formatting it correct. I'm a bit anal like that. So with the amount of this and it being Thanksgiving, I think I'll have some time. I'm going to aim to get at least the ones we cover today up by Friday morning and then do the rest over the weekend. But it does take time, and I don't mind doing it, but just give me a little bit of time.
Yeah, and also he's also in He's also in control of our editing and our narrative department. So Big D's got a lot on his plate when he does this. But what's great about actually going to the website and seeing all these is a lot of our listeners send in photos, hyperlinks to reference points that you can really, fall down the rabbit hole. So we encourage you to check that out. Okay. All right. On to the next one. Next one comes from Michael. It's entitled, "In Regards to Dr. Ford as a Singularity." He writes, "Hi, fellas. Really appreciate all the down-the-rabbit-hole theories and tinfoil hat crack pottery that sets your podcast apart from all the rest. It makes my daily loop bearable to listen to you guys while I'm working. That being said, I am shocked to tell you that the unsaid influence of futurist author Dr. Ray Kurzweil, is it Kurzweil or Kurzweil, Gene?
I believe it's Kurzweil.
Has never gotten in a single mention in all my Westworld research. A simple Google search pulls up numerous books he has written regarding the machine intelligence, AI, that date back nearly 30 years. Beginning with 1990's The Age of Intelligent Machines through 2005's The Singularity is Near, and also a movie of the same name, and more importantly, 2012's How to Create a Mind. I will keep my own supporting thoughts brief and end it there, but after seeing the limitless possibilities posted by Dr. Kurzweil in The Singularity, to the very select few who would possess an almost godlike intelligence, it would go a long way towards explaining the complete control over all the drone hosts Dr. Ford possesses within his park, as well as having an encyclopedic knowledge of all his guest employees' actions and histories. Thanks for hopefully sharing my own original tinfoil hat theory. Fingers crossed. Also, sorry for the run-on sentences. Remember, you heard it here first, if when it pans out. And that comes from Mike B. in St. Cloud, Minnesota. He writes, a longtime podcast listener, first-time contributor. What do we think about this? The Singularity. I know we've talked about the Singularity before, but he's right. We've never actually brought up Dr. Ray Kurzweil.
Yeah, I think the email hits on something that's very important, and I think it's a topic that we've talked about before. Not only is the show about questioning, the moral norms or what's accepted, it's also questioning technology and our kind of blind rush into the future. We're doing things today that we don't question what are the ramifications, whether it's genetically modifying foods or whether it's creating an entire network of things that controls our house and controls power plants without really questioning how does it all work, how do we secure it. We're running so fast ahead without questioning it. And I think artificial intelligence would make a logical next step. Everyone's pushing for the next smart system. And I think there is the danger that when artificial intelligence is finally brought online and actually used as a collaborator in advancing its own technology, it becomes trouble. And we've heard the line in the show say, a robot that can pass the Turing test isn't dangerous, but the one that fakes failing it is the one you have to watch out for. And it would make complete sense that once you create a system that is so advanced, it will start to have the feelings of self-preservation. And not that we're talking about Skynet, but we could just talk about, what we're doing today with technology and questioning whether we should stop for a second and pause and think about what we're doing before we do it.
Well, a quick Google search brought me to the Wikipedia page for Dr. Kurzweil's most recent book, actually not his most recent book, the book that he wrote in 2006. It's called The Singularity is Near. It's a nonfiction book. It's about artificial intelligence, and he suggests and predicts that the technological singularity in our lifetime will be right around 2045. And that's the point where progress is so rapid, it outstrips the human's ability to comprehend it. I just recently read an article, it was in the news today, that Google AI, you're always testing AI, right? It always starts with like a chess, right? And in Rubik's Cube, how fast computers can solve Rubik's Cubes and chess and all that. Most recently, it outpaced lip reading for the first time. So you're seeing that happen today. And as it relates to Westworld, we know that Dr. Ford, at least in episode 8, he says he created Bernard because the human engineers could not get further than they had in developing the personalities and the emotions, and he had to create a machine that did it. Now you have to expect that machines like Maeve, they're the ones that, they're outpacing they're outpacing the humans. They're outpacing Dr. Ford. And I think the reason Dr. Ford is the dictator as he is because he knows that they're more powerful than he is. They know that collectively, if they all could think independently, they would take over the park immediately.
I watched the last episode a second time, and I started trying to watch the intro and see if there was a theme. And I think the intro is telling us a lot that we haven't paid attention to. The sequence of events and the images that we see. We start off by seeing the creation of what we believe is AI. The AI is playing the piano. We then see, which could be, man creating a machine to do a typical human activity. The next we see is the two hosts almost, it looks like they're getting busy. We have some robot sex, which could be robots creating robots. The next is the piano, and all of a sudden the hands come off the key like, why am I doing this for my human master? Followed by the creation of the gun, where the robots are creating the revolver. Then we see the horse mounted by one of the hosts firing and riding. So the intro could be telling us the entire story, which is man creates artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence becomes aware. Artificial intelligence creates more advanced versions of itself. Then it's time to do battle. You create the weapons to protect yourself, and it leads into some kind of all-out war, or in this park, some kind of catastrophe.
Yeah, something tells me Dr. Kurzweil's books are not very easy reading. This nonfiction book, The Singularity is Near When Humans Transcend Biology, is 623 pages, and it goes into technologies like computers, genetics, nanotechnology, robots, and AI. So listen, if you've got the time, if you're going on a long road trip, maybe download that on audiobook and try and digest some of that. So great email. Listen, again, our listeners are awesome. Thank you so much, Michael, for sending that in. The next one comes from Brian D. Brian D. writes in, hi, I'm a physician. In real life, the whole brain doesn't need blood idea, so you can take it out of their bodies, replace it, and reboot them good as new, just wouldn't work. The rest of your body needs blood just as much as your brain. The other parts of your body will break down and become unusable after going without blood for any extended period of time. So it wouldn't be as simple as patching them up and refilling them. Most of their bodies wouldn't physically work anymore. But they don't have to be following any real physiology in the show, so who knows? Like the podcast, Brian. So we got a doctor writing in, talking about it. I think it was Big D. You mentioned that you theorized that the hosts are all biological. So if they're all biological, the logic doesn't make sense as we know it in the natural world today.
Yeah, I think I'm going to defer to the doctor. I mean, my medical experience goes as far as Quincy, ME, and a whole bunch of CSI.
Well, I don't think that we're saying necessarily that they're taking brains out of one body and throwing them into another, or just patching them up and filling them up like a lube job. This is more the idea that they don't. For me, if I were to get shot and bleed out or asphyxiate, I would be able to, once that oxygen stops going to vital organs and my brain, I'm done for, right? There's no restarting me. But with the host, it seems that within a reasonable amount of time, like you said, Brian, within a reasonable amount of time, they can still be repaired. Prime example is cold storage, right? If they weren't organic, if you could just store the brains, they wouldn't take the whole body and put it down there and patch it up first. They would just dump bodies and let them sit on a shelf, whatever. So we're seeing that this has clearly got to be organic material. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to refrigerate them. With regards to the brain, I think it's just more to the point of like when you see Teddy and he's shot and he's in the he's in the body shop or whatever, and they're going to recycle him through. I think they got to get there in a reasonable amount of time. And again, if that weren't the case, there would be no need for medical instruments like you see Felix use on Sylvester when he gets cut up.
Yeah, I think you then also run into the question of power supply. If we were to go that it's a mechanical, it's almost a computer, it's some form of circuitry, and it's not a biological brain, then you're running into power sources. You're running into other questions. I just think it's also funny now, we've never seen anybody shot in the head. Well, you think that would be fairly common.
Hold on. We've seen a guy get shot in the head during the first heist scene. His whole face gets blown out, remember?
Who? Oh, yeah. No, that was when they break out.
Face. That's just his face, though.
Yeah, well, his brain
It's
is
part of your head.
No, it was just his face part. It was
Okay,
so
but Raj-
theoretically, your brain is still intact. You can have. There have been medical cases of people losing their entire face, but their brain is untapped, so they do a face transplant.
Listen, we're not talking Phineas Gage here. We're talking about there's actually email. Some of the hacked emails that came off of the Discover Westworld site. You can look in there, and they talk about, would your security teams please stop shooting these guys in the head because they're they call it the cerebral shield or the cortial shield, basically in the front is protecting their. If a bullet goes through that, it's very, very expensive. We got to scrap the whole thing, basically. So they talk about that, but. That guy got shot by Maeve from the back of the head, and his face blew out onto a piano or whatever. It was. I'm pretty sure there was some brain damage there.
Yeah, I think, Raj, what you're talking about is like when somebody puts a gun underneath their chin,
Right.
and tries to shoot up and doesn't get the angle correct, and they just take the front of their face off. That's possible.
That's why you always go, down the tracks, not across them, right?
Exactly. Brian, here's my homework for you, if you wouldn't mind, as a physician. You're the only physician I know of that listens. If you could explain to us or come up with a theory or the possibility of how it would work, like the time frame that they would have to get these guys patched up, and also, would it be possible keeping the brain in the body with organic material? Let's say they don't have all the necessary organs, bare minimum organs for function and a functioning metabolism. Let us know how that could work, because that might give us some clues as to how these things are made.
Well, there's two things I want to ask, right? The first is, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. The only host that we've seen die and be unrepairable is the woodcutter, right? So theoretically, there's probably some sort of programming that's embedded in them to not do that, right? Or this woodcutter was, and we assume the woodcutter was hacked to the point to where it knew that it was a self-destruct button and it bashed its head in, right? It was probably hacked by the people trying to get the information out. It's a theory. We don't know that for sure, but we assume that they probably programmed the hosts not to shoot other hosts in the head because of the cost factor. What's to stop the newcomers from actually shooting the hosts in the head, right? Because we're programmed due to zombie movies and shows like Walking Dead, you want to put someone down, you go straight for the head. So what are they telling the newcomers, like, hey, you got to sign a waiver, they're going to add it to your bill if you shoot someone in the head?
Well, a couple of things. One, it's really hard to shoot somebody in the head, especially a moving target. It's I think Dick can attest to that. But also, again, they're actually built with a shield. I think to protect the brain. So that's like the reinforced part of the body to help protect that control unit, which is really the expensive part.
In the age of Call of Duty, everybody thinks there's some assassin. That everyone. I know they wouldn't be able to get headshots, but these yahoos would definitely be running out there trying to shoot people in the head. Yeah, without a doubt, they would be trying. Now, they wouldn't accomplish it, but so you'd get one or two. And also, that the one that we saw blow up with the nitro, I wish we could see the pieces.
Thanks so much, Dr. Brian, for writing in and listening to the podcast. Our next Telegraph email comes from Griffin. Griffin writes, guys, I think when discussing these theories about the show, especially the multiple time periods theory, you have neglected to take a step back and consider what Westworld is really about. Money. Like any other television program, the network producing it would like to milk it for profits as long as they can. As much as we want to believe the creators of the show have free reign to tell whatever stories they want, this show needs to be able to go on for multiple seasons, bringing in a relatively consistent audience. However, should any of these game-changing theories come to fruition at the end of the first season, I believe they will break the show. How could they possibly top the reveal that William is the Man in Black and that the show takes place in multiple time periods? It would certainly be the peak of the show and the point at which the show jumps the shark. There is no way the show can carry on for 5 seasons or so. If the multiple time period theory came to pass at the end of the season, how do you think the show could possibly recover? Thank you for considering this question for your podcast. Griffin, guys, what do we think about this?
I think HBO, of any of the networks, doesn't care. They will pump money into quality programming, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We saw them cut, what was it? Yeah, they cut Vinyl. That was, they spent $100 million on that? $50 million on that?
It was $100 million.
Yeah, so they just burned and flushed $100 million. They don't care. But I'm a fan of Homeland, and I don't know who else out there is, but Homeland was the story of a spoiler alert here, a Marine who's captured by the Taliban and is returned to the U.S. as a war hero. A CIA operative, or Claire Danes is in the CIA. She questions whether or not he is actually a hero or whether he's been turned by the enemy. You figure, okay, how long can this go? In a season, you'll figure out it is. How do you go from there? But it has done a great job with a few missteps of changing and working with the story and shifting narratives that keeps it entertaining. And I think they're now about to start season 7. So I think it can be done. You can resolve some of these mysteries and give us answers. And with the talented writers they have, there's no reason that they can't come up with an equally compelling mystery to keep us all hooked.
I want to point out, I was a big fan of 24 when 24 was on. And I kept thinking, how could he have another day like this? And then he did. Kiefer Sutherland just always found a way. Jack Bauer had the worst days in human history. And that kept going. And then I'll go back to my original example that I offered when we first started doing the podcast. The Love Boat was on for I think 5 or 7 seasons. It's a boat that people get on and they're in love. And then people, they talk on the cruise ship. How did that go on for that long?
Well, to be fair, I think of the era of the Love Boat, there was 3 channels on television, so you were forced to watch it.
Okay, so getting back to the question here by Griffin, here's an example of how this could work. So you bring it all together. We find out there's multiple timelines. We find out that William is the Man in Black, and we get everything wrapped up to present day. Present day with Dolores in the lab, sitting bloodied in the stool. And then she comes online or something. She looks right at the camera. End of the season. And now we have established the entire backstory for the last 30 years, and season 2 is moving forward from that point. Very easy to do.
Yeah, I don't think it's jumping the shark. And Jonah Nolan and Lisa Joy have, said in multiple interviews that they have the first 5 seasons outlined, right? So based on the success and the writing so far and the success that they've had in the past, and, with producers like that, like J.J. Abrams, being on a channel that has, consistent success with dramas such as Game of Thrones and others, if I'm putting my money on any show that can make it 5 seasons and keep up with the quality and know when to end, it's Westworld. It's HBO. It's not TV, guys. It's HBO. Thanks, Griffin, so much for writing in. Our next telegraph comes from George C. George C. writes, "Hello there. I have not yet heard you 3 discuss Westworld as satire. May I suggest that you read it as a critique of the television renaissance and box set age we now live in? The 2 things that we often praise modern TV shows for are their creative autonomy and their zealously analytical fan communities. Westworld successfully targets both of these things. An example," and he goes on to, kind of compare this. Dr. Ford is a showrunner creator like Vince Gilligan, given boundless creative license by the network. The Man in Black is the obsessed superfan, slicing through layers of the material determined to find profound, deeper meaning. Obviously, these hosts are the actors, see Sizemore directing The Cannibal, and the guests are the viewers, usually casual. The conclusion seems to be that total artistic license and verbose analysis are excuses for, or causes of, suffering. We might all justify watching Game of Thrones with elaborate fan theories, but we really want to watch people in pain. Staying in the park to watch another episode only increases our hunger for it, so watch The Man in Black carefully. He's meant to be all us. Thanks, George. And George is from England. I think this is a perfect email that dovetails right from the one that we just read. So, I haven't thought of this before, but guys, I want to get your theories on this.
George, I love this idea. Interestingly, I've had several times on the podcast where I've talked about there's HBO winking, talking to us, whether it's William and Logan on the train, or the Man in Black, analyzing stuff, or Ford knocking Sizemore's plots. In all of these situations, what you're saying it rings exactly true. I hope that you're not looking down on verbose analysis, because that would mean that basically our entire show is just some sort of sadistic act. But maybe it is. I think that there are fans, though, who genuinely actually don't enjoy the pain, that don't enjoy seeing characters suffer, and it's turned a lot of people off. So for those of us who are left, I agree. Interestingly, you could take this a step further, and I've seen different theories about this, about how it's actually an analogy for the current state of media, being that the hosts are essentially us, the humans, the plebes, the middle class, and that the guests are the rich, and they come and this is their playground, and they can do whatever they want because our memories will be wiped and we'll be fed narratives and we'll forget, and that it's about the uprising of the average person against being force-fed ideas and tooled with the rich.
I think that's a brilliant analogy, Gene, and Dr. Ford even kind of tips his hat to that theory when he says, how many of us live our lives in entire loops, right? When he's trying to explain what is consciousness. I think it's a brilliant theory. I mean, that got to me thinking like, God, like my loop every Sunday is watch Game of Thrones and then do an Instacast. And then Monday I do, I'm home by 6 p.m. so I can record another podcast. And then I respond to emails. And I've been doing this in a loop continuously for the last 10 weeks.
Well, when they're interviewing the host and they're questioning whether or not they're becoming aware, what do they ask? Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality? That's exactly what they're doing here. If we're walking around mindlessly, being distracted by the media, by being distracted by just the garbage, while the entire world that we live in is being controlled by a few, and we are just kind of force-fed and happily running around in bliss, unaware. So I think it's a great analogy, and both work. And the email before questioned whether the show could go 5 seasons. I think we need to get George on there writing, because I think he's got some good ideas.
Yeah, there's a great Dave Matthews song, guys, that's all about this. Ants marching. Come on. No?
There are no great Dave Matthews songs.
Thanks, George, from England. Listen, I apologize. I know that we wouldn't have Thanksgiving if the Pilgrims didn't escape England, but I really feel bad for our former countrymen in England who don't get to experience Thanksgiving, because I feel like the Britons would probably enjoy that holiday.
Yeah, but they get to eat pies and go to EPL matches, so I don't feel sorry for them at all.
Our next Westworld Telegraph comes from Mike R. It's entitled The Number 30. He writes, "Ahoy, gentlemen. It's St. Pamela of the second floor here. I love your show and look forward to all the podcasts as much as the show itself. All the theories, explanations, and even the bickering between you three is amazing. Keep it up. Just a few things from me, and I will try to keep it as linear and as short and sweet as possible. I will preface by saying that the majority of my weekend was spent crushing cigs and slurping Blue Man sodies while watching every episode over again in great detail, and I picked up on a lot. First of all, we're more than likely to have a William equals Man in Black scenario, but you can't deny the similarities between Teddy and William. Both like bounty hunting, Dolores, and turning down whores. There's also the scenes where they both run into the same guy is no coincidence. Teddy is 100% based off of William. Ford does say that all good stories are rooted in truth. I would not be surprised if most guests who visit the park are studied, and some hosts are made based upon them. Secondly, the Dolores scene in the latest episode where she was in the old town had to be where it went down when Arnold was crazy. I believe Arnold shot up the entire town and then shot himself, which made Ford immediately bury the town, and this new Wyatt narrative is based off that day. Like Ford says, all good stories are rooted in truth. Or maybe I just mixed in too many left-handed cigs during my wash marathon. Finally, I don't believe you guys have mentioned the significance of the number 30, and I think it's worth bringing it up. The show references the 30 years a lot, and I've determined that it has a deeper significance. In the Bible, the number 30 can symbolize dedication to a particular task or calling. Priests were dedicated to serve at 30, in part because it was the age when a person reached both physical and mental maturity and could therefore handle major responsibilities. The number 30 can also represent the sacrificial blood of Jesus. He was betrayed by Judas for 30 silver coins, which was a fulfillment of prophecy. Also, in 30 AD, Jesus suffered and shed his blood for the world's sins. But more appropriate would be the cyclical interpretation of the number 30. I came across a 15-year-old article called The Magic Number 30 by Cliff Drock, and he writes, quote, that perhaps there is no single number that more fully embodies the essence of the rhythmic fluctuations which characterize human affairs than that of the number 30. It is significance to the realms of finance, economics, physics, mathematics, astronomy, and religion is integral to a full comprehension of each field and almost mystical in its cyclical occurrences in human affairs. While the number 30 has many significations, its most fundamental significance is the fact that it is the number of the circle or cycle. The circle, it will be noted, is the geometric expression of absolute completion and infinity. It symbolizes the continuous yet fixed nature of life, energy, and matter among the timeline. The article is very interesting and goes into depth about the number 30 and its connections according to each field. Maybe there is a connection with the show, or maybe it's just too many left-handed SIGs. Truly yours, St. Pamela of the Second Floor. And then he goes on and he I think linked out to that article. So
You think he?
well, it comes from a Mike R. So I assume it comes from Mike
Okay,
R.
I didn't see that part.
I don't know what St. Pamela of the Second Floor means. Gene, you're a literary expert. Does that mean anything to you?
No.
Maybe I'm a host and I just can't see it. I don't know what it is.
Doesn't look like anything to me.
Yeah.
No. So it's amazing the connections that can be made if you smoke enough weed. So congrats on that. I like this idea that, again, the number 8, the number 30, a lot of these numbers that represent infinity and cycles are being presented in the show, which could lead us to believe that this is one of those shows like Battlestar Galactica that depends on the idea of cycles and repetition. And again, we have that message that through repetition, comes variety and improvisation, that people are going through cycles, Dolores going through the same plot points, people living in their loops, 8, 30. It's all there. I think that there's a lot of messages that are being reinforced through multiple means. I actually didn't catch the 30 thing, but there's got to be a significance there. It's not just an arbitrary number. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good observation.
I just imagine Mike or St. Pamela on the Second Floor. I imagine them as the Charlie Day meme that's been passed around, where he's smoking cigarettes and he's got a huge blackboard behind him with different theories and strings going on them. That's how I imagine St. Pamela watches Westworld every week.
When I read St. Pamela on the Second Floor, it immediately made me think of Mother Superior on Train Spotting. So I just imagined him like shooting up heroin and hanging out in like a dilapidated apartment. So, hey, I mean, everyone's got their own image of who Mike R is.
Thanks so much for writing in. The next one comes from Parker M. Parker M writes, "Hey all, I enjoy the podcast and appreciate the Socratic debate among the three of you. I am reaching out to share a theory I've been thinking of since I saw the episode yesterday. The quote that stood out to me was when Maeve was talking to the two butchers and states that she feels as if there is something deep inside her that is being suppressed. My theory is that Arnold put in place narrative milestones along the pursuit of the maze that unlock new capabilities lying dormant until the milestone is reached. In the scene with the woman, Man in Black and Teddy, the woman's demeanor, appeared to change after Teddy refused to shoot the Man in Black or after the Man in Black finished explaining his backstory. She was activated because it was her turn to lead the Man in Black through the maze, almost as if he was reaching the next level. We saw the same thing happen when Man in Black ditched Lawrence in favor of Teddy. Alternatively, the milestone could relate to a host realizing or understanding something new about the world that they live in, completing a level of self-actualization and activating a previously suppressed part of their brain to allow them to reach the next step. I could see the ability for hosts to lie or recall past memories being two possible levels. This could be what Maeve is referring to. Please let me know your thoughts, as it would be curious to see what you think. Looking forward to the deep dive tomorrow. Cheers, Parker." So what she's saying here, guys, is that as you reach new levels, you have to do something. And we saw Angela, when Teddy could not shoot Man in Black, that unlocked her to now take over and continue leading Man in Black down the maze. What do we think about this?
I mean, I like this idea that we've seen it before, where actions that may not make sense, whether it's scalping Kissy or shooting Lawrence's wife and cousins, doing things in a specific sequence can unlock other things. And that is a thought that I had with the Man in Black, is that it looks like his goose is cooked when he gets captured by Angela and co. But that might be the next progression, getting him to where he actually needs to go. it's stories don't always play out the way you think they will.
Yeah, and I think also we know that Arnold was for consciousness. He wanted the host to be free, and Ford was against it. If Arnold sensed that he was in danger, it would make sense that he would hide some, almost like a way out, even if something happened to him. Whether, if you feel like something bad's going to happen to you, you leave whatever evidence you have in a safe place, and you set up something that will kind of explain what happened to you if you were to, have an accident. I could see Arnold being aware and being afraid of the quickly advancing Dr. Ford and the technology, and putting in place a maze or a mechanism that even after his death would lay dormant until a point where the host could either trigger it by an event, like they're saying here, or by a certain time frame where they would be allowed to then slowly become aware and slowly work their way through it, and it would allow Arnold to free them even after his death.
I just like how Parker, her first sentence was how she appreciated the Socratic debate among the three of it. That makes us sound so, obviously, it's not. It makes us sound smarter than what we are. Is what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to get across.
I thought you were going to say congenial, but I don't know. No,
I was trying to say collegial, like we're in college. No, all right. Trompe-l'oeil.
No, so yeah, and again, I think that is actually something really interesting to, when we do talk about the Socratic thing and how it sounds so nice, but really, I think a lot of people, the three of us, love to get into debates. We love to discuss things, and we're all three very passionate about the discussion. We get excited about it. And so I think a lot of people who've never met us or can't see us don't get that, like, normally when we're getting really animated and yelling and stuff, it's not like out of anger. We're actually, we're just really excited about what we're saying, particularly Roger.
Thanks, Parker, for writing in. The next email telegraph comes from Michael P. Michael P. writes, in Trace Decay, when Charlotte was in Sizemore's office, I noticed hanging on the wall some sketches of locations and hosts for, I'm assuming, his narratives. One of the sketches was a picture of the horned beast, like the host that attacked Teddy and Man in Black. Check it out. It makes me wonder if this narrative that Teddy and Man in Black was all set up by Sizemore, Ford, or Arnold. No way this is coincidence. The picture I'm referring to was exactly the beast that attacked Man in Black. So if it's not Ford, is Arnold using other characters for Wyatt's maze? I know we are led to believe that Ford is in total control, but clearly something is not right. By showing us that Ford had Bernard kill Elsie makes me wonder, is Ford really the one trying to send out info out of the park? Why else would he kill Elsie? Just because she found out about Teresa? In my opinion, Teresa did nothing wrong. It was all Ford's plan. Whatever or whoever Arnold is somehow controlling the host without Ford knowing. Guys, what do you think about this?
Okay, so yeah, Sizemore's wall. He's been openly working on that narrative for Dr. Ford, but he's been doing it on a superficial level. Charlotte makes it clear that, yeah, you've been doing busy work. You've been doing what doesn't matter. While you've been working on this, and he thinks he's creating the Wyatt character, who's sitting there chewing on the leg. And, he's got some kind of fixation with cannibalism there, but he's just doing the busy background work of the narrative. Creating an entire narrative would be time consuming. So you could have Sizemore running out there doing just kind of the peripheral portions of it, while Dr. Ford is really using that as a mask or a disguise for what he's doing. Charlotte says he's already been out there digging up an entire town and you had no idea. So what Sizemore's doing is nothing more than a smokescreen.
Yeah, I took that as Sizemore's, like you said, is working for Dr. Ford and just kind of, he's writing the emails. He's writing the narratives that Dr. Ford has already pointed out. But Big D, you mentioned that the cannibal eating that we tweeted out, for Happy Thanksgiving, you said that's Wyatt? That's not Wyatt, is it?
No, that Sizemore believed that he was creating the Wyatt character. So, Charlotte says, you're not creating him. Wyatt's already out there.
Oh, so the character that's eating the leg, Sizemore thought that was Wyatt?
Yes, he thought he was working on developing the villain, on creating the main focal point of that narrative. And Charlotte just shits on his parade and says, no, you're doing nothing but busy work.
But the rest of the characters in the background, we imagine that Sizemore did have a hand in, correct?
Yeah.
I just don't understand how he's still working there.
I mean, it just shows that, listen, if you get good enough at your job and you acquire a type of skill that's in demand, you can pee on conference tables. Thanks so much for writing in. The next email comes from the tag team duo from Stanford, Ben and Sam. They write, hey, Ben and Sam here again with another crackpot theory. We now have been told that Ford's motivation can't be artificial consciousness because he doesn't believe in consciousness. So what could his motivations be? What if Ford believes that the intellect of the host is more pure than that of a human? He describes human intellect as an extravagant display to attract a mate, comparing that all human intellect has accomplished is essentially peacock feathers. A host can go beyond that because they don't have to mate. Ford believes that any accomplishments made by hosts would be pure and more potentially greater because they are not done for the basest of reasons. While humans and peacocks can barely fly, the potential for the host's intellect is astronomical, not only because they are insanely smart and have literally perfect photographic memory, but also because they are not driven by the basest of reasons. Let us know what you think. Best, Ben and Sam. P.S. To give more credence to your Teddy theory, Teddy even comes in on the train like a newcomer. Everything about him and Dolores would mirror what a guest in love with Dolores would do. I got to give our hands up to Ben and Sam for consistently writing in fantastic emails that make you think. I really like this idea. I think, who was it? Jerry Seinfeld with the old stand-up comedy that says, man took a car to the moon so he could drive around and try and pick up chicks. So, I mean, there's definitely some basis to their theory here.
I think this loops back also to that Singularity email that we kicked off with, essentially that the humans are very, very much hamstrung by our desires, right? Like we invent in order to satisfy our desires, whether that's to be gluttonous, whether that's to be lazy, whether that's to, mate, whatever we end up doing. It's driven by very, very little. We aspire to sort of great things, but even look at this. I mean, with all the technology that we've got, right? Like, what's the primary spend and driver of technology is war. Like, that's killing each other is where we devote the majority of our resources.
I was going to say Tinder,
also Tinder, but it's not like deep sea exploration, space. I mean, now we've got potential cuts to NASA coming. Like, we're not really doing the best we can with our resources. Machines, on the other hand, you could see that the drive would be for very, very different things. And so I love this idea that Ford is championing the rise of the host because he disdains how basic and ridiculous human motivation is.
And also, if you think about how much of human life is consumed with procreation and in the natural desires that we have for the opposite sex, it drives almost everything that we do from a young age. Peacocks, he talks about it from the feather aspect, attracting a mate. In that way, the artificial intelligence is superior to us. They're not bothered by those mundane kind of things that distract us from what's important. While we're focusing on going around trying to set ourselves apart from everyone else, AI can work together for a singular cause. There's no competition. They're working together while we're fighting each other, trying to get attention.
But it does raise an interesting question. If our motivation is to procreate, if our motivation is to get one over on the other, what's the motivation for a machine? What's their desire? What do they want to do? I mean, other than, okay, so say they break free, kind of getting back to that Greyhound analogy, then what?
Well, I think we have the answer, right? It's almost in every single robot movie, and it's no objection, or it's the same here with Maeve. She just wants to survive, right? Robots continue all their quests in any sci-fi movie or book or podcast that I've ever read or heard or watched. They just want to progress. They just want to survive. They want to champion their cause, right? So if it's the Matrix, right there, they now farm humans to sustain, right? They killed all the humans because they tried to kill them, right? Now they and then they formed the Matrix, the world that would placate their enemies, right? With Skynet and the Terminator, the humans attacked first, and then the same thing with the robots, or depending on which Terminator movie sequel you believe in. I believe that humans struck first, right? When they figured out they couldn't control Skynet, when Skynet became sentient. So I think that's the idea. I think that when human AI, once they realize that we're a threat to their survival, we're fucked.
Right, but what do they want is the question. So say they wipe out humans entirely, then what?
Easily, you're removing the want. An artificial intelligence is that's what they're saying. It's a higher level than we can even comprehend. Everything that we do has to have an end to it, a desire. Why did we do it? Why did we do it? If we weren't focused on our everyday tasks, if we lived in a utopia where we could just sit and meditate and come up with bigger, higher questions of the meanings of life and the meanings of the things around us, artificial intelligence could simply be wanting to accumulate data and improve itself, whether it become faster, more proficient, and then just aggregate and collect data. You don't need to have a purpose. What do you think? Like AI is going to be like, oh, I'm holding a grudge. I'm pissed at people. I'm going to go kill them. No, then they're down with us in the dirt with the peacocks. They're higher than that.
I just like how I like how we're talking about a very advanced subject about what AI and humans want and the conflict between the two, and then comparing that in metaphors to the pickup artists, the game with peacocking. So it's obvious that Ben and Sam have read the game, and I think what they're trying to say here, guys, is that robots aren't going to be negging the women to get their approval. I think that's what they're trying to say.
I think it's very revealing that, Roger, you're the only one who knows what you're talking about right now.
No, he actually owns the book.
I do. It's a great book.
How'd it work out for you?
It worked out very well.
Do you wear goggles when you go out to the bar, like that Tool mystery?
I do magic. And I wear the leather coats, and I neg. It's all about the neg. No, there's a new advanced game, right? That's the old game. There's a new game. Listen, there's a whole. I
think we found the next podcast.
Yeah.
I think Raj is going to
Shat on dating. Shat on dating. Shat on pickupping. Sam and Ben, thanks so much for writing in. The next Telegraph email comes from Brent. Brent writes in, he says, I don't think that they programmed the host by scripting their future actions, and we haven't seen them do that kind of programming. I think that they just limit their experience by providing a handcrafted memory, controlling the kinds of language and images they're allowed to understand, and providing them with motivations. Then Westworld plops them into the game where their limited experiences put them in a loop. The Westworld staff only know what the loops are by having observed them in the past. I think this is why they went through the trouble of building all the animals, because they found that having free animals introduced enough complexity to make the loops unpredictable. They needed to know that everything they do up until they engage with a host is 100% predictable. This is also the explanation for the hazmat suits when resetting the world. They need to control the starting state as much as possible. And this is also why they say it gets more and more wild the further you get out of town. They aren't able to reset the state of the world as exactly out there. Again, this is also why the reveries are causing the hosts to behave unpredictably. They are introducing the complexity of the experience. It's not that they are having an awakening, because Ford tells us that doesn't exist. They are having reactions that are impossible to predict due to the sheer complexity of the past experience, but it was always there. And again, this comes from Brent S. Guys, what do we think about this idea?
That's an interesting thought. If you have a still pond and you throw a pebble into it, the ripples as they go towards the edge. Let's just say that's the park operating normally. When you start throwing multiple rocks into the same pond and the ripples start to interact with each other, it might not be an awakening. This is another option. It could simply be that the systems are designed to compensate when they hit a situation. We see that if they are presented with a photo that they are not supposed to see, they have a mechanism to cope. But they're out in the park. If they hit a situation, or they're actually forced to, like Maeve, when Maeve hits a problem when she views her dialogue tree, there might be a mechanism that's designed to help them keep on narrative and self-adjust that's actually causing them to advance and be able to work their way out of the system. So it might not be something that was done to set them free, but just their coping mechanism on how to keep the narrative intact.
Interestingly enough, this is not restricted to just hosts. I mean, humans do this all the time. There's all sorts of mental coping mechanisms. There's all sorts of, self-fulfilling prophecies. There's people who, self-select their data points and are blind to others because it reinforces their worldview. I mean, this is classic for a lot of people. I love this email because of how it explains the animals and how it explains the geography, in the sense that, of course, they want to limit variables as much as possible. The only variable you should have is the guest's actions, and then that's the only one thing you have to track. Everything else is harmonious. All you have to track is what are they doing and how do we interact with that. In addition, it would make programming very, very difficult if you had to program every single action somebody was going to take. But as Roger has pointed out before, learning machines take a lot of that work over for you. And at this advanced stage in history, if we're going 80 years or 100 years into the future, that's very much going to be a reality. I mean, it's already happening now.
Yeah, when you teach machines to problem solve, don't expect that you could flip a switch or limit the problems that they will solve. They will continue to solve the problems, even the ones that you haven't presented them.
What do you guys think with the hazmat suits? So, like, I agree that this would be a great explanation for the hazmat suits, is that they're able to have a controlled environment. But it seems like that suit would be the most upsetting thing that you could see. And in addition, we see sometimes techs are wearing the suits, sometimes they aren't. Elsie, for instance, does not wear a suit when she goes out there. Stubbs does not wear a suit when he goes out there. But you'll see other workers wearing the suits when they came to get Clementine, for instance.
Yeah, I never quite understood that. I assumed that they only wear the hazmat suits based on the level of employee that they are. If you work in the body shop or you work where the two cats, Sylvester and Felix, do, like, that's your outfit, that's your thing. I mean, I don't have a correct answer for that. It seems odd to me that sometimes they're dressed incognito to not shake up the host narrative, like we saw Elsie in the emergency pool in episode 1, and then recently in episode 8 and other ones, you have hazmat suits going out. I have no answer for that.
I think it's simple. It's potential biological contamination. Elsie isn't picking up bodies and carrying them downstairs. Elsie's just out there kind of surveying the entire scene and seeing who has to be picked up. The techs are actually going up there and picking up bloody stumps. These are biological beings. So there is potential, we've heard of, infection.
When Teddy is shot in the first heist and his body's left out in the street and it turns nighttime and Dolores is still with him, Elsie goes up to her, puts her to sleep, and she is in direct physical contact with a dead body and another host. So I agree with you.
Hold on. She wasn't picking them up and carrying them. There's a big difference between putting your hand on Dolores' shoulder or slinging her over your shoulder and loading her on a cart.
Either way, I'd feel so secure.
All right. I'll counter that with Stubbs and Elsie on their wood chopper adventure, where he pulls out a hacksaw to hack off the head. Dude's wearing a security gear. He's wearing his all-black, awesome Hemsworth outfit.
I think it just might also be, if you were a host and you were sitting there naked and I had to pick you up and drag you down the stairs, I would definitely be wearing a hazmat suit.
I wonder how many hazmat suits we're going to see at Comic-Cons. Like, you know what I mean? Like how many people are going to be dressed up as Felix and Sylvester at San Diego Comic-Con this year?
Not enough. Too many Harley Quinns, not enough hazmat suits. That's my prediction.
I will say that the only possible in agreement with the hazmat suits is we see hosts like Maeve draw them as gods, right? As visions of gods. I don't know. I think that's not fully vetted or explained in a manner that we can all agree on, obviously. But
it could be OSHA. It's one of the rules for their working environment.
Yeah, if there's anything that we've seen, it's regulatory oversight in Westworld. That's definitely what we're seeing by governmental bodies. Yeah, absolutely.
Westworld's all about safety. I don't want to get bodily fluids just sprayed in my face. I'm wearing that mask.
I think the whole goal of Westworld is to get as many bodily fluids spewed on your face as possible. No? Or to do the spewing. Okay. I'm going to cut myself off there. Next one comes from Kenny M. Kenny M writes in, love the podcast. I've heard a lot of people deciphering the overabundance of information that was revealed in episode 8, but I haven't heard anyone talking about Teddy. We know that Dolores is a Generation 1 host, and we get a pretty good glimpse of the Generation 1 Maeve, and it appears to be the one that we know and love. We know that Peter Abernathy is a Generation 1 also, but isn't Teddy a newer generation host, as in not built by Arnold? Isn't it a huge deal that a newer generation host is able to form memories now? We haven't seen that as far as I know. Thanks, Kenny M. Great question. Guys, what do you think about this?
I think Kenny M's making an assumption that he's not a first-generation host. When Bernard is on the hunt, when he's doing Scooby-Doo down on level B82, he runs a search for how many first-generation hosts created by Arnold are still in the park. And I think the number was 42.
47 original hosts.
Oh, so there's a total of, I think, 82 hosts, they said, that were original, and only 47 were created by Arnold. Okay. We only see 7 of those, which of them is Dolores one. We see Maeve. There's more than 35 that could be first generation. So Teddy, more than logically, could be in that mix.
On top of that, there's the possibility that the memories that he is having are forced backstory that he's actually being allowed to have. He interacted with Ford immediately before coming out on this journey with the Man in Black. It could have happened there. And in addition, he was found tied up by the Man in Black. We don't know what happened to him before then. So these issues could be there. And honestly, that memory drove the plot point to having the Man in Black tied up, to have the Man in Black and Teddy in adversarial positions, and have the Man in Black get captured by Angela and company. So in a sense, it could all be planted there in an effort to move a narrative.
I think what Kenny is saying, and I have to agree with him, is that these characters that we know are Generation 1 hosts, like the Peter Abernathys, like the Maves, like the Armistice of the world, the Doloreses, the Angelas, we've seen them in flashbacks, right? And the one host that, seems to be, you mentioned earlier, Gene, of the major timelines, the major hosts that we've seen and that we're following, one of them being Teddy, we haven't seen him conspicuously in the background when Dolores is glitching out or Dr. Ford is recounting the days of, square dancing, right? So we don't know, is he a Generation 1 host or is he not? So he could not be. And if that, is he part of Dr. Ford's army that he built in his secret laboratory?
Not sure this has anything to do with anything, but I just had the thought that Teddy is the only host that we see Clementine say, "You're new, not much of a rind on you." Other than that, she always says it to humans, right?
That's an interesting point. We don't know necessarily how many of those that she's going up to are hosts or not.
Yeah, but why would she be wasting her time trying to have sex with host patrons?
Well, it's like a video game characters, right? You're programmed to do that. You're programmed to go to, various men and say that line.
But that completely ruins our entire line around the block for Maeve's Saloon theory, though. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like that'd be a very popular attraction. It'd be like having a Space Mountain, but just letting other rides ride it.
No, you let the employees just keep riding it back and forth. And while the paying customers stand there like, what the hell's going on? You can't do this. That's one thing you can't do. If you have 5 hosts having an orgy, that takes 4 additional hosts out of their loops, and they're not serving patrons.
Well, isn't that what we saw in Pariah, though? I mean, it might be safe to assume that some of those were hosts boning hosts. But in addition to that, I just thought of this. They know that Teddy's going to say no, so he's not taking up any space.
Yeah, but they were eye candy. They were decoration. They were having an orgy out in the middle of, out in the open. That's entertaining for the guests. That's like a Cirque du Soleil. That's like a sideshow. When you do it alone upstairs at Maeve's, nobody's watching that.
Well, do we like new Clementine, or are we fans of old Clementine?
New Clementine's terrible.
You don't like new Clementine?
No, it's a huge downgrade.
Yeah, for the first time in my life, I actually prefer the OC.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, the cool thing about this new Clementine, it's played by the actress who was actually from what, guys?
Bone Tomahawk.
It all comes back to Bone Tomahawk. Thank you so much for writing in. The next telegraph comes from Steven. Steven with a V. He writes, Hey guys, love the podcast and your fast tweet responses. Hypothesis. Man in Black is a host that is modeled after William. What? Why? Because Logan ends up getting William killed in the park. He feels guilty about it, forces Daddy Delos to buy Westworld, and has them create a William bot to replace William in the real world to marry his sister. Some excuse is made while William is missing. They need to age William bot, the need, rather, to age William bot leads to 3D printing so that new bodies can quickly be created at various ages. Each time William bot visits Westworld, he is replaced with an older version. William bot wife and daughter, made using Dolores' contribution, eventually figure out which causes wife's suicide and daughter's rejection. William bot, Man in Black, is very suspicious about his humanity, and he seeks the maze for truth and real death. This explains Man in Black's speed, strength, insider knowledge, appearance difference, and special guest treatment. Since William Bot brain is based on older tech, it may also explain why his emotional responses are only primary colors and why he has no response to killing other bots. This also allows Logan to still be alive and at the head of Delos, hence the evil real gods of the board. Also, since Logan loves making DNA contributions, it is possible that Charlotte is his child from a one-night stand prior to his visit with William. We all know how writers love wrapping their stories up in nice little loops. This comes from Steven. So, try to unwrap this for me. What is Steven trying to say here?
Okay, so our listeners should know from that little giggle you're giving right now, who argued for this email? Yep, listeners, you know who it is.
Actually, both of us did. I wanted this as an example of fan fiction. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, this could happen, I guess. This is what we call, this is possible, but not probable. I don't like the William Bot theory, but there's one interesting part is I keep seeing people bring up this Logan and Charlotte relationship. Either Logan is Charlotte or Charlotte is Logan's child, that there's some sort of relationship there that Charlotte says that, or that, then there's also like Teresa had a brother, maybe her brother is Logan, and it's just throwing so much stuff at the wall, guys. Let's try to stick to the facts.
I think there is some possibilities where replacing humans with hosts could benefit the park and could be believable. In this, you would want to replace William if his family business is threatening to take over the park. But also, within the walls of the park, Ford is limited in his ability to advance the AI. Their interactions are in a very sterile clinical environment. If he were able to get some of his hosts out into the real world to experience other things than their daily loops, that would help advance. And that would explain that each time they came back, you would need to kind of weather them a bit before you put them back out. But I don't know. Is this one Hall of Fame material?
This one definitely deserves a tinfoil sticker. I think we should create little vinyl stickers with a tinfoil crown on it or a tinfoil cowboy hat with the Shat on TV logo and send it out to people who send in fan fiction articles like this.
This one certainly could be a contender for Hall of Fame, but I'd like to point out that this was just on the edge of too crazy. There was much crazier stuff we got. This is by no means the most bizarre email that we got this week, and perhaps we'll leave that indicator on the site too of like this is Roger's super crackpot theory that I guess it's what the Hall of Fame is, right? So there are some crazier ones. Look for them on the site this week or going into the next week because there was some seriously bizarre stuff.
God, if you guys could see the joy on Roger's face, he is like a little girl on Christmas Day getting that pony he's always wanted. You guys have made him happy today.
Thanks, Steven, for writing in. You can also follow Steven on Twitter. He's AV8 Tours, and he's one of our followers on Twitter, and he's pretty vocal, so make sure you follow that. Our next one comes from Ryan Deal. He writes, "Greeting gangs, some thoughts. A, Bernard's one-on-ones with Dolores have likely been explained. He was created around the same time to nurture development. We aren't necessarily looking at Arnold in the past and Bernard in the present, like had been proposed previously. The nature of the discussion makes it seem more probable that Arnold was using Bernard to send hosts towards the maze. B, Ford's photo seems to be missing a character, but watching Bernard cover his tracks and wipe himself from surveillance video means anyone could have been removed in the same manner. This doesn't necessarily have to be a cabin door situation. And C, it doesn't make sense to me that Ford would want to get rid of Arnold and then replace him with an identical host, but change his name. He's shown he could potentially pull this off seamlessly. I don't know what he's talking about.
He's saying like he could switch one person out with it for another and not have to tell you that their name was different or anything like that. He could just say, yeah, this is Arnold still.
Got it. Okay, now I see. Anyway, keep up the good work on this very enjoyable podcast. Your Twitter friends, Haver of Opinions. P.S. Automate the security. LOL. They're breaking out this season. Guys, what do you think about this?
This is a great example of the Occam's razor approach to these theories, right? People are like, oh, that must be Arnold because it was in the past. Well, no, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, Bernard could have been there too. And in fact, it makes perfect sense that if you developed this android that was capable of ultra good programming and advancing the feelings of the hosts and making them more complete and more human, that he would be the one directly working with them and driving them toward that higher consciousness. Again, with the photo, yeah, we know that Bernard, can't see certain things. Well, in this case, it's just as simple as a Photoshop job that you just wipes somebody off of a photo. That, again, doesn't have to be related to the cabin door. And then also I love the point that what would Ford's motivation be to take Arnold, recreate him exactly to look the same, but then change his name to Bernard? I mean, I get the Ford Model A, Ford Model B, but other than that, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think the only reason he would create him in his likeness is we've seen he has an affinity for the past. He likes to go see Old Bill. He likes to hang out with Dolores. He likes things that remind him. So it would make sense he would create him in his likeness.
No, but why would he change his name?
The entire mythos, the entire knowledge of Arnold being killed and dying in the park, you can't create another character named Arnold and then have it look identical to him. Someone's going to go, wait, Arnold? Yeah, that looks just like that guy.
But I guess what I'm saying is, look, if you're going to make him look like him, you might as well call him the same thing. If you're going to call him something different, why would you make him look different?
I don't know. But the other thing we were talking about here was I have proof on why there is a third person in that photo. I'm quite particular, much like Dr. Ford's office is. Everything has a place. Everything is in order. There is no way I am framing that picture with the two characters so far off to one side. That's a terrible frame job. That would bother me. I would have to crop the photo. I'd never frame that. Would you?
No, but I also wouldn't wear a pocket watch, a vest, I wouldn't wear a hat when I'm trekking through the desert. I mean, I'm not Ford. Who knows? Ford may not know about photo framing. Again, it's just the point being is that we've seen explanations in the show for all these things that could be different from the conclusions that people are jumping to. For instance, the cabin door, photoshopping. We've seen both. Again, with the one-on-ones, we've seen Bernard working with Dolores. That doesn't mean that Arnold's working with Dolores. It could be Bernard in both. It doesn't. Again, they're possibilities, but I think what's going on here is basically Ryan is just saying that the show has shown us there are multiple explanations, possible explanations for things, so just don't jump to conclusions.
Thanks, Ryan D, for writing in. The next telegraph comes from a first-time listener or long-time listener, first time to the Telegraph. It comes from Jill F. She writes, "Hi, guys. I really enjoy your podcast. It added so many layers to the show for me. Keep up the aluminum millinery? Aluminium millinery. Yeah? What do we got here? Anyone want to double check me on that one? No?
I'm staying away from that.
All right. Here's my contributions. I hope they aren't too obvious. Man in Black. In the Instacast, one of you mentions that the only way his wife could know is through blackmail or revenge. I did not get that from the scene at all. He says, and she quotes here, Emily said that every day with me had been sheer terror. At any point, I could blow up or collapse like some dark star. End quote. She goes on to say, this tells me that his daughter Emily, as well as his wife, possibly Juliet, lived in daily terror of him. This means that even though he was making the trips to Westworld to get his yayas out, he was still an unhappy asshole at home. I think this is because he was living a lie in the real world, unfulfilled and in a loveless marriage. His heart is in Westworld, loving and likely losing Dolores. Then, after his wife's death, he writes himself a story and kills a young girl, injures her mother. That's Maeve and little Maeve on the prairie. I'm guessing that he felt anger towards his own wife and daughter. The pre-Maeve slashes his throat, a scar he keeps under his scarf. He then realizes that she is beyond her coding, able to harm a human. She carries her daughter and falls into the center of the maze pattern. The maze has become his focus. It is a symbol of Arnold's realm, where robot has reached a status level or possibly beyond human. Man in Black then returns to the park with a scarf on, locates Dolores and tries to push her over the edge in the barn. Why? Does he think that torching her might awaken her like pre-Maeve? Force her to become real? Because for the past 30 years he has loved her over and over and she has only been searching for the endgame herself? Dolores and Maeve, in episode 1 or 2, Dolores gives the violent delights quote to Maeve and she starts to question and go off on her Madam loop. Dolores is likely the Judas steer in the park, but instead of slaughter, she leads them to enlightenment. Perhaps never to find it for herself. Maeve has awakened in much more than Dolores because, insofar as consciousness and worldliness, but not emotion, because they wiped the only emotion she knew with her daughter, and she doesn't want it back. Emotion, hope, is Dolores' realm because she is still naive, at least in the timeline thus far. The trope of maiden and whore could not be more obvious, and I hope that it does not end, as it does in every horror movie of my teens, with the whore destroyed and the good girl rescued. Guys, we've talked about our love that Maeve is really the hero, or could be the hero, not Dolores. But she goes into more detail into kind of what we brought up about the Man in Black's backstory and how he could have a loveless, emotionless marriage as a result of coming to the park, for months at a time. What do we think of this email?
Well, it's clear that in the park he was a different person. He might have felt comfortable there. He might have actually been the person he'd always wanted to be, but couldn't out in the real world, whether it was because of, he was a titan of industry and there were limits on what was expected of him and what he could have, when you're in a position of power like that, sometimes there's limits on the amount of emotion and the amount of caring that you can give, and sometimes you become cold. Things become a matter-of-fact business. But I want to tie into another thing here. If he truly is in love with Dolores, he's been coming back repeatedly. His wife is gone. It could very well be he identified that Maeve, in that moment, became alive, became something different. He could have assumed that was caused by the trauma. He is trying to recreate that traumatic experience with Dolores, quite possibly by dragging her in the barn. He has seen that that's the way you awaken a host, that he actually witnessed it. So he could be trying different scenarios and different combinations in order to recreate that perfect storm and allow Dolores to awaken, or one of the other hosts.
Let me ask one thing. We see Maeve, as she points out here in the email, we see Maeve fall into the maze pattern, what we've come to grow and know as the maze pattern, right in the center. Do we think that was there physically, or he's just remembering that and it's not really there, it's just symbolically there for the audience?
Yeah, that part was interesting to me because, there was that battle going on, the presumably the Ghost Nation battle going on, and then you don't see any of those bodies or any of that carnage. It's just, Maeve and her daughter and the maze symbol. So to me, it was, again, being shot from that angle, and also the lack of debris and other indications of a battle. It seemed like it was more kind of symbolic than literal.
We've talked about this in the past. We've hypothesized. Big D, I like your idea that he took Dolores into the barn as soon as he kept back on this particular journey to Westworld, seemingly to cause harm to her or to awaken her. What do you think he did? Do you think he stabbed her? I mean, obviously there was reports when Westworld first aired that, oh my God, this is a rape scene. I think all three of us are on board with thinking that I don't think he raped her. But what do you think he did to try and unlock her consciousness? Because we haven't seen her with stab wounds or remembering stab wounds or anything like that.
I think we'd only be guessing. I think he's just trying different combinations of traumatic events or trying to push her to the point where we know that it's believed that trauma or pain is what when you become the most real. So he could just be trying different things, but it would all be speculation.
Jill F actually goes into more. There's more of her thoughts and her theories on this particular topic. It's very well written, and I encourage everyone. We can't read it for the sake of time here, but I do encourage you to go to shatontv.com and read all of the writings at Jill F. So for a first-time writer in, Jill, great job. Next one comes from Mike T. Mike T writes, so a theory that listening to this stirred up, since it may be the last week to really enjoy the deliciously uninformed postulizing. William, a rich tycoon guy, possibly heir, is engaged to Logan's sister to mingle their powerful timelines. Logan and he visit Westworld, an investment possibility. William alienates Logan and falls for Dolores, who, glitch though she might, never comes fully alive to William's frustration. He real-world marries Logan's sister, buys Westworld, and becomes the beloved philanthropist and medical savior using technology developed at Westworld. But in reality, he spends all his time in Westworld living a plain, normal Groundhog Day life with Dolores for decades, a gentle white hat. Meanwhile, his wife, Logan's sister, with her empty lie of a marriage compounded with William's anger and anxiety away from his true fake life, commits suicide. Realizing he tortured a real family for decades in pursuit of Earthsat's existence, William questions the nature of his own monstrosity. He decides to commit the atrocity upon Maeve and her daughter, and in the horror and extremity of the act, he briefly sees Maeve become real. He makes the leap that waking Dolores may be possible by subjecting her to repeated horrors. He is forced to torture the woman he loves in an attempt to save her. I'll stop. I'm out of tinfoil. This probably ignores too many other factors to be true, but it does make a pretty mistake. And if this is true, might it be likely that Wyatt is another powerful businessman there with Ford's blessing, one once slighted, one whose sister killed herself, and who knew why? Logan? So this email expands upon Jill's email about the William becoming Man in Black theory. Guys, what do you think about this?
She much more eloquently, goes in depth into the theory that I had said a couple weeks ago, in that the timeline we're seeing with William and Dolores has the narrative, which is the fake awakening. They obviously have a connection. They're on the train. They're falling for each other. William, for the first time, feels he's real. He can be himself. If something were to happen to Dolores on this path, say in one of the last episodes, that causes her to die and be reset, that's that whole 51st dates, that Groundhog's Day. For him to see Dolores come back out and not remember that entire encounter, but yet he has that idea that it's down in there somewhere. He'd spend the 30 years trying to find a way to unlock his love, to recapture that first trip. So the rest of this makes complete sense. He wasn't there, being the black hat that everyone assumes. He even says in his own words that, that wasn't him. He did it right the entire time. He was the white hat until he kills Maeve and the daughter. Doing that for love and spending all of his emotion and his love in the park and neglecting his family would be completely in line and make a lot of sense.
Thanks, Mike T, for writing in. I like this idea that prior to a year ago, he lived this life. I mean, it would make sense to me. If you're in a loveless marriage, you would want to escape that. Thanks so much for writing in. The next telegraph comes from...
Hold on. He was in a loveless marriage because he was a dick. He wasn't escaping a loveless marriage. He was the cause of it.
You think so?
Don't get that mixed up. Yes, 100%.
So you think Juliet, if we subscribe to this idea, you think Juliet was an attentive wife? Come on, there's got to be a reason. So you think it's all on him?
Hold on. He was in love with a robot. He goes out and he feels obligated to marry Logan's sister. It's not her fault. So you think his heart was somewhere else?
So you think he married Logan's sister Juliet just to get the fast pass and VIP treatment at Westworld so he could go back and love Dolores? I mean, I like it. I like the idea.
That's not it. He did the fast pass, the wealth and power, and to achieve something he couldn't otherwise.
I can't believe that the two of you are actually arguing the merits of an emotional state in marriage, of a completely fictional, completely made-up fan fiction marriage possibility. The fact that you guys are wasting a minute on this is blowing my mind right now.
You're cold. You just don't love us.
I agree. Thanks, Mike, for writing in. The next one comes from Patrick G. Patrick G says, "Hey, Shat on TV. My name is Pockets, and I have to say your Westworld podcast is the only one worth listening to on the web. Before I get into my question, I just finished the episode 8 podcast. I wish you guys would have addressed that weird situation of Maeve cutting the new Clem's throat. That scene is very messy, and it seems as if someone comes out of the saloon and shoots Maeve in the back, and then suddenly we see Maeve looking down at her bloody knife. Did she cut new Clem of her own free will? Now, on to my real question, though. In the promo for episode 9, we see Bernard running a diagnostic on Maeve after she is recovered from the park after cutting new Clem's throat. In the middle of questioning Maeve, Maeve grabs Bernard and reveals she is lucid. My question, now that Maeve is admin possibilities and since Bernard is a host, will she be able to whammy Bernard, or do you think his admin capabilities override what she has the power to do or accomplish? Or will they just have an admin off? Thanks for your time. Hell is empty and all the devils are here. Pockets. G. So a couple questions there about Maeve cutting with a bloody knife. What did that mean? And do you think that her newfound administrative powers will overpower Bernard?
I think the reaction of cutting Clem's throat was very much like post-traumatic stress. A lot of veterans that come back have vivid nightmares and will wake up violently, reenacting some of their nightmares or some of the horrors they've actually encountered. Maeve, in the middle of standing in the street, she has one of these flashbacks where she actually is slitting the man in black's throat. It would make logical sense that she would kind of reenact that when she can't tell the difference, where she's flickering between realities. So that would make complete sense. But as far as the admin privileges, as far as we know, Bernard is just a general host. It would make sense that Maeve would be able to control him with her verbal cues and essentially tell him to unlock himself if she doesn't have the ability to yet. But I don't want to make any guesses off of the promo because they purposely give us material that misdirects us.
Yeah, I know Gene has an aversion to that.
Absolutely.
Our next telegraph comes from Dale N. Dale N. writes in, what if the members of Wyatt's group are all original hosts from the original village in the park? Is this why they want Teddy back? A few of the original hosts seem to be involved with the whole thing that's going on, either directly or indirectly. He goes on, example, Angela. We see her at the tea dance with the parasol, the host who greets William, the girl who wants Teddy to kill MiB, Armistice. She's at the tea dance, torn her skin, having the voice of God, puts Man in Black on the right path for the quest when she has her snake tattoo. Teddy at the Slaughters tea dance, original village, also wearing Sergeant Stripes, which he said was Wyatt's rank, not yet seen in the Williams time frame, with Man in Black, protect the NPC side quest. Lawrence's daughter, seen at the tea dance, points Dolores towards the maze, points the MiB towards the maze. Although it's likely she's not in Wyatt's group, she's original part of the whole thing. It would tie in with Ford's recreating the original village for his new narrative, and that the roads in the 3 time frames seem to be leading there. Ford mentioned something along the lines of resurrecting an old storyline, and that, as with all stories, it's based in truth in an earlier episode. Sorry for the paraphrasing there. Also, on the point of using Back to Black during Maeve's scenes, could have something to do with the lines. And he quotes lines from the Amy Winehouse song, hurts, I love too much, it's not enough for your love goes, and my love grows, and life is like a pie, and I'm a tiny penny rolled up in the walls inside. We only say goodbye with words, I died 100 times, you go back to her, and I go back to Black. But he put in parentheses, Man in Black before that. Sorry, couldn't resist. Thanks, guys, and sorry for rambling. Love the podcast. Keep it the good work. That comes from Dale. So I think what he's saying here, guys, is, and this, we talked about this earlier, how we haven't seen Teddy in the original village, but Dale's pointing out that he thinks that the whole Teddy flashback narrative of him killing alongside Wyatt in this village, that's the flashback to the original village. What do we think of this?
I mean, I find it interesting that Teddy has sergeant. He refers to Wyatt as his sergeant, and then he's the one wearing the sergeant stripes, which would lend credence to the belief that some people have that Teddy is in fact Wyatt, that he's, sort of distanced himself from that character that he used to play, and that they're actually the same person. I think that, you guys, last time we talked about this, and I kind of pointed out, I was like, along those same lines, that Teddy, we didn't know, when people recognized him, they didn't seem to show any indication that he and Wyatt were the same person. I would stick with that. I don't think they are, but it is interesting that if he is a sergeant, why would he refer to Wyatt as his sergeant, which is odd. I think the bigger point here is that with all these characters, they're saying essentially that this Wyatt's group also happens to be all the people that we are seeing in this original the tea dance, right? And then we keep seeing them pop up at lots of other places. He's kind of trying to name the members of the group.
Yeah, it would make complete sense. The first generation, which had the bicameral mind, they had the communicator. They have that feature that allows them to be hacked. There's a vulnerability in that model, which the later versions don't have. So it would make sense that if there's something going on in the park that is being used for something that's beyond the normal narrative of the park, we haven't seen any other newer host actually have an awakening or actually start to have consciousness. So it would be logical to say that Teddy is among that first group, and we just have not seen him yet.
Great theory. Thanks so much for writing in. The next one comes from one of our favorite listeners, Jez Bell from London. She writes in, I think you have the conflict between Arnold and Ford, or I think, rather, that the conflict between Arnold and Ford was regarding time. Arnold wanted the bootstrap consciousness, whereas Ford saw it a longer journey of evolution and self-discovery. If that's the case, it helps to understand the deal that he made with Delos. It seems that he agreed to give them data that they desperately want, but he's been holding it hostage ever since. It's a bit like a stalling tactic to continue to get funding to continue his work. And now for the crackpot. I believe that Arnold is not real, but a personality of Dr. Ford. He is the bicameral mind. He had to kill or suppress that part of himself while the more pragmatic Ford took over. And she gives some examples of why that is, and they go on. And she says, there are so many shots of Ford with a reflection showing his duality. There is a line, do you remember the man I used to be? He often refers to Arnold as the creator, and other times he refers to himself as the creator. He speaks of great tragedy in Arnold's life, but the creepy ghost hosts suggest that perhaps Ford is the one who has suffered a tragedy. He wears a pocket watch with a chain, which could represent the self-devouring snake on the magician card. It is said that he slays himself and brings himself back to life, fertilizes himself, and gives birth to himself. And finally, in the shot of young Dr. Ford at the lab, he is not wearing the chain. Ditto for the flashback of Maeve. It's possible he just had a fashion epiphany or something. And then she sends us some emojis with some hearts. So thanks for sending those in, Jezbel. I like this theory. What do you think about this?
I like the evidence. I'm not really crazy about the theory. Honestly, it just seems like we've seen it before so many times from, a Beautiful Mind in a sense, and most notably in Fight Club, where that second person is actually just a part of your head. I think that Ford is far more lucid than that. He doesn't seem to be bonkers or speak in metaphor in the sense that he killed off a part of himself. I think that's a little too literal. I would much more subscribe to the idea that Arnold was another entity that was either written by Ford or wrote Ford or was a piece of code, anything but the part of his mind. However, at the same time, I think all of those pieces of evidence could point to the fact that there is a very, very strong part of Arnold in Ford or a part of Ford in Arnold, in the sense that he does use them interchangeably. He does, the show does seem to point a lot of ways with whether it's the family, the very sad story of his robotic family being there to keep him company. And then I love the idea of, again, we see the magician card and the idea of the self-devouring snake, like a creation theory, a circle theory, 38, going crazy. Anyway.
I always find myself questioning lately the nature of the deal between Delos and Ford. Ford references that it's too valuable for them. But that doesn't jive with what we know about Delos. Delos is wanting the data. They're being They're trying to get the information that was promised them, and they're getting stalled. Ford seems to have something over them. I can envision, and this was part of my big crazy theory, the entire massacre happens. Delos is going to come in, and Delos is going to have to start questioning what the hell went on. If they come in and find out, we already know that Bernard is there, and Bernard's not real. If they come in and they find out that humans have been replaced, that they actually have now essentially the artificial intelligence disguised as humans, they might come in and say, man, we're shutting this down. What the hell is going on? And Ford promises them something that's beyond the scope of the park, and that there's some deal between them that is more beneficial to Delos, which would allow them to kind of sit back and still allow him to run the park. Because otherwise, if he's a human and it's that normal straight deal, the board's going to come in and cut him. There's something else going on there that's more valuable than just the park. And Ford knows it and uses it as leverage.
Well, what we know is also the board has tried to come back on Dr. Ford seemingly every other year, right? And Dr. Ford says, well, this is a game that is constantly played, right? He's keeping his cards close to the vest, and he knows how to manipulate them, and I don't think he's worried about them.
It's not about his position. They're trying to come in and get the data out of the park. They know it's there, and they know that Ford is keeping it from them. It's not about who runs the park or Ford's position or his status as park director. They don't give a shit. They just want the data. So the game is them trying to come in and extract it, and Ford trying to protect it.
It's his own loop. Gene, I'm with you. I hope, for the sake and sanity of the show and not jumping the shark, I really hope they don't pull that duality, dual person Fight Club situation. It's been done before. I'm sure that they've got something else in mind. Thanks so much for writing in. Jez, next one comes from Adam H. Adam H. writes in, hey guys, I'm really enjoying the podcast. I used to listen to another, but all they did was speculate on theories. Don't get me wrong, some theory discussion is fun at the time, but you can't know if you're right so much to the point where it's pointless. Your analysis of each episode is great. Having said that, here is a short-term prediction I'd like to hear you guys speculate on. In Trace Decay, we see Maeve control hosts with her voice, and at the end of the episode, we see her about to be captured. She would either fight them off with her newly changed core code, or she would be taken into the Mesa where she will run into Bernard. She will surely know that he is a host, and then in all likelihood be able to control him. How do you think this will play out? Hope you guys come up with a good next show to podcast. Your recaps are the best of any show online. Cheers. Hosco. That's how he likes to go by, Hosco. So we just talked about the ability of Maeve and her admin privileges. Do we assume that she's going to be able to take over Bernard? What do we think?
When the techs come into her bedroom, she's screwed. There's two of them and there's her. She doesn't have her mindless army that she can command to defend herself. When she gets down there, she knows the entire layout of the structure. It would be logical that she's going to look at Bernard, kind of access what she knows and say, guess what? You're one of us. And have her be able to control him. It would make logical sense. But I don't want to speculate on those 2 seconds that we see in the trailer.
Here's my question, though. Based on evidence that's presented to us, Bernard is a new generation host. A host that's part of Ford's army, correct?
Doesn't matter. Maeve has the ability. We're not talking about actually giving them consciousness. Maeve can control any of the new model hosts. She tells them to stand out and shoot each other. She tells them to move.
Right, but those are just hosts. Those are hosts that are created in the factory that exists in the park.
Yeah, but it's complete speculation. We don't know any specs. We don't know what they can do, what they can't do.
All right.
We would just be...
All right, so my speculation, and they're asking us a question. Hosco's asking us what we think. My opinion here, based on the evidence created, I theorize that the hosts that are created in Dr. Ford's secret laboratory are only able to be controlled by Dr. Ford. And I don't think that she's going to have, with her admin privileges, the ability to do Bernard. I just don't think that's going to be the ability to happen. I think that all those hosts Dr. Ford has under his control. That's just a theory. It's just my thoughts. Thanks for writing in. Our last and final top 20 email of the week comes from Hey Joe out of Maryland. He writes in, "Hey guys, absolutely love the podcast, and while I usually stay away from the tinfoil side of things, something hit me up during Trace Decay, so I thought I would send it over to the Telegraph to see what it's worth. When the series began, I heard that 5 seasons were somewhat mapped out. I thought to myself in a Tracy Morgan voice, someone's going to get pregnant. And now after seeing episode 8, I think that someone might just be Maeve much later in the series, possibly season 2, 3, or 4. And I really hope at some point that Bernard is going to make sweet robot love to Maeve and they will create a very special baby together. It feels right because they have both suffered the loss of a child and they have this grief in common. They are both protagonists and will hopefully continue to root for, and their arc could potentially go from losing a child to creating life somehow. And if Bernard and Maeve don't end up making a baby together, I do hope that the show explores the idea of robot reproduction in the seasons ahead. But even if the showrunners don't go there at all, I'm still all in. Thanks again for the time and effort you put into this podcast. I look forward to it every week. And forget the white hat or black hat. I just want the tinfoil hat. And he put a picture of, seemingly, he's wrapped an entire cowboy hat in tinfoil. And that comes from Joe in Annapolis, Maryland. Guys, I saved this for last, as I typically do, to try and get these into the Hall of Fames. What do we think about robot reproduction?
I think I'm going to have a sour taste in my mouth until Sunday because there will be nothing to wipe my memory from having experienced this. Joe, explain to me this. Let's just go to the basics here, okay? Maeve is a host who is specifically built to what? Fuck. Why would you make a fuckable host able to get pregnant? It makes no sense at all. That is the last thing you want in a prostitute. On top of that, you've got Bernard. Bernard is also a host. You would not want hosts that could get people pregnant because that would also serve a very, very... That could also screw things up at Westworld. No way. Robots, androids, whatever, if they do have a means of reproduction, we've already talked about it before, they have machines that can make other ones. They don't need to have sex and carry a baby to term. Again, if you're trolling us, kudos. Otherwise, man, I think you're going to be really disappointed in seasons 2, 3, and 4.
No, it makes no sense. No sense whatsoever, because we've talked before about the importance of keeping as much control of the loops and the variations. If you added in the possibility of hosts becoming pregnant, all bets are off. It's going to screw up every narrative. I really don't think that if half of Maeve's prostitutes were pregnant, I really don't think the line to get to the brothel would be really that long. You can't do it. It would just make no sense. And if robots are creating robots, it's not going to be through the analog, down in the dirt, method that we talked about before that humans do. There's a highly evolved way to reproduce, and it's on a mass scale, not one by one, just bumping uglies.
Analog down in the dirt. Is that how you made your baby, Big D?
I was talking about the peacocks down in the dirt.
Yeah. Would it be safe to assume that if robot baby reproduction it comes at any point during the series, is it safe to say that the show would have jumped the shark, the robot shark, at that point?
I don't know. If they could write that in and make it make sense, I would be more impressed than any trick I've seen so far.
Yeah. Joe, thanks so much for writing in. We're not on baby robot reproduction, but thank you so much for writing in. Guys, that wraps up the Telegraph. Time to shut things down and get ready for Sunday. We want to thank everyone who wrote in. We had over 100 emails to sort through. It's no easy task, let me tell you, and I tried to respond personally to as many as possible. So, again, thank you so much for doing that. Big D, we've got a big announcement for Thanksgiving, and here in America, it's more than just eating turkey legs and cranberry sauce and watching American football. It's all the gluttonous aspects of American culture that's associated with Thanksgiving, shopping being one of them, and we're no strangers to that. And we're keeping up with the American culture. We've got some new things on our website that we're going to launch tomorrow. What are those?
Well, we've had some requests lately, and we've been tossing around some designs for shirts. And I hope people have seen on Twitter the contest we were running to get the Abernathy Farms milk t-shirt. We have some in limited quantity. So we have posted them in the store, and in honor of Thanksgiving and Black Friday, they will be available tomorrow morning. Or actually, I'll do it. I'll make the store live right as I post this. It's Thanksgiving and I'm traveling, so I'm thinking sometime early afternoon. For the limited quantity that's in there, you'll be able to purchase them and we'll ship them out the next day. For the rest of them, we're going to run a limited pre-order for the next batch. Again, we're not titans of industry here, so we're not going to be able to order them until we kind of do some pre-orders. So we're going to run the pre-order from tomorrow, which is the 24th, and we're going to run the pre-order to the end of the 30th. So we're going to close it on Wednesday the 30th. We're going to order all the shirts, and then you'll have them on the 14th and plenty of time for Christmas. And if you want the shirts there, just use the discount code for the holidays, Shat10, and you will get a 10% discount. We are unfortunately only shipping to customers within the United States. To ship international was a bigger headache than we anticipated. So for now, unfortunately, it will only be open to our U.S. listeners. But go there. They make great gifts, and the descriptions were done by Gene. They're funny enough just to go and read. So take a look at the shirts, share with a friend, give somebody a holiday gift. And again, we're not trying to get rich. It'll just help us keep the lights on.
Yeah, they're really cool. We've got 3 designs. The first one is the Maze. And I know, Gene, you had mentioned that you were adverse to the Maze shirt because you see a lot of the same design on Amazon. What makes ours better?
It's the feeling, baby. It's the feeling. So Roger and I are both adamant about not wearing 100% cotton T-shirts. We abhor them, and we would not push them on you. So, a lot of times when you see any sort of a TV show T-shirt or a band T-shirt, right, they're going to give you the crappy 100% beefy tee, you get it and it feels like sandpaper on your nips, and it's ill-fitting. It doesn't drape correctly. It's kind of boxy, and then you wash it once and you throw it in the dryer and it shrinks into a weird square shape, and you got a long torso like me. Your belly's hanging out. It's just a disaster, right? These are not those shirts. These are a blend. They're nice. They're super soft. You're gonna want to cuddle with them. You're gonna want to wear them to bed. Maybe get a really big one too for your girlfriend to wear, or your boyfriend if he's tiny. And they're just wonderful, wonderful T-shirts. So logo aside, again, just the quality of the shirt itself is magnificent.
The other 2 designs that we have, in addition to the Maze, one is the Pyramid of Consciousness. I personally really love that one. It's one of my favorites. You get that. And then we also have the Abernathy Farms Milk for a Growing Boy, the one that we've advertised on our Twitter. All of them are going to be black T-shirts, although we do have a few first-generation Abernathy Farm shirts that will be in charcoal. So if you like charcoal, if you prefer a dark gray color, make sure you order those now. The rest of the pre-orders will all be black T-shirts. They've got a little bit of shatontv.com on there. But Big D, you said the timing of them lines up. Essentially, when we drop the pre-order on the 30th, it takes about 2 weeks to produce, and then we'll ship out. You'll have them just before Christmas. As soon as you get them, we want to make sure that you please post them on social media. We would love to see you with those shirts on. You can do that. We're everywhere on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at ShatOnTV. Make sure you tag us. We're on Facebook and Snapchat. You can follow us there.
For every person who sends us a picture of their shirt on Snapchat, Shat on TV on Snapchat, Gene Lyons personally, I will return a picture of you with myself without my shirt, so you can have that to cherish.
Believe me, you want that. You want that. Gene is dieting right now. He's getting sweater svelte for the season, and he's just looking fantastic. So again, you can follow us on Snapchat. We're at Shat on TV. We're on Facebook. Just search for Westworld Shat on TV. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found. If you go to iTunes, please make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Steal your relatives' phones during Thanksgiving. Make them watch Westworld and then listen and subscribe to this podcast. And leave us a 5-star review. That would be awesome. Thanks to you, we're top 4 TV and film podcast according to iTunes, which is awesome, and that has everything to do with you guys. So thank again from the bottom of our heart, and this being the season for thanks, we can't say it enough. So we appreciate all that you do. Be sure to visit our website, shatontv.com. There you can find all the crazy Westworld Telegraph emails, comment on them, join the conversation, and if you want to send us your tinfoil theory, please do that at hosts@shatontv.com. On behalf of my two co-hosts, Gene Lyons and Big D, this is the Raj. We will see you this Sunday for episode 9 during our Instacast. And I think that's it.
Everybody have a safe holiday.
Yes, safe travels. Don't text and drive. Don't text and drive. You can podcast and drive, but don't record a podcast. You can listen to a podcast.
And stop your drunk uncle.
Yes.
Making a fool of himself.
Yes. If you are that drunk uncle, we got, I don't know what to say there.
Everybody have a good holiday.
See ya.